Pointers. Let me get my mic over. I didn't realize it was so far. Hope you're doing great today. We got a Where Do I Sets. Bon matin à tous. Good morning, everyone. B for victory. Bon matin. Good morning, Bitcoiners. I like the French here, guys. Excellent. Excellent. On adore. On adore. And as you can tell, there's a lot of sunshine coming in this room. It's filling the room up today. The rain is over. We're going to be talking about the rain in a second. It was very funny. Well, not so funny. The people of I'll now that I know there's French people here, I'll trigger you. In the capital of Vermont, they call it Montpelier. Montpelier. Montpellier to all of you French people who know to pronounce French words. Totally underwater. The dam breached. So we're going to talk about it. Guten Morgen. Guten Morgen, Pleb Chris. Daniel, I hope you survived the floods. I hope you're on high ground. I hope you were not in Montpelier yesterday, because Montpelier, no fun. People canoeing around. I shared on Twitter a little video of my river here, but you should see how breached it was. It was all over the place. It was pretty wild. Pretty wild stuff. So we got a sun up, maximum sun up, right, after all that rain. We got a Bitcoin running, as always, on time, 10-minute block times, block size, okay, we're good. All that's left for us to do is have a coffee and talk about what's new. We get plus de français, des francophones partout, French people everywhere. David Vincent de Toulouse. J'ai passé Noël à Toulouse une fois. La Ville des Roses, the city of roses. The whole thing, by the way, we got this Napoleon movie coming out, right? I'm going after Prince Napoleon to speak at Bitcoin Amsterdam, by the way. So I guess Napoleon going to be played by Joaquin Phoenix, Ridley Scott movie, so it's like the Gladiator people back together. I think it's gonna be a big deal, and I'm glad I saw the trailer. It dropped yesterday, and it confirmed what I have said on this show, that Napoleon made his name by shooting cannons at people. People didn't realize that was his big innovation. How are you gonna stop the protests? Well, I got an idea. Toulouse, of course, built by Napoleon's grandnephew, Napoleon III. Really neat guy, if you guys don't know much about Napoleon III. As interesting as his dad, for sure, as his grandfather. And I think Prince Napoleon, as they call him, is an interesting fella. So if the Cinquième République does indeed fall, there's people out there who want Prince Napoleon. So there you go. All right. Now, we know what you're here for, and that's Max. I bet they don't have the Roths in it. No, they don't. I don't think they're going to put them in the movie. Of course, the Rothschilds betrayed him, right? So I don't think that story will be there. All right. So as you know, we like to start every day with the fakest news we can find, right? With the fakest news we can absolutely find. So yesterday, there's this account you can follow called Junk Science, Steve Malloy. So he broke down an article. So normally on Moscow time, I don't break articles down. I don't even read them. I just say the headline and that's enough, right? So this is from the Washington Post. I can't really do the headline, though, because the headline is pretty boring. Flash floods hit New York and Vermont, killing one and prompting an emergency. So, not really Moscow time. Sad for the person, it's pretty bad news, right? We don't want to laugh about bad news, but I think enough time has passed. It's been 2 days, right? It's been 2 days. So Steve Malloy says this, right? He breaks down the article and takes pieces of it, right? So here's what he says. Claim: the Washington Post calls the flood a 100-year event, but then upgrades it to a 19-year event. Reality: Vermont flooded in 1927. Mention of this was omitted, because the 100-year flood occurred 96 years ago after the last one. So now it's a 19-year event. So he underlines it. What was once a 100-year storm can now be expected to occur once in every 19 years, right? Do you understand what they're saying? So it wasn't quite 100 years, but now it's going to be every 19 years. So that's in the article, right? A paragraph later, the 19-year-old flood becomes a 9.5-year event because of the data, right? So the data is clear enough to advance the climate narrative, but not clear enough to provide people with warning, right? So here's the actual part. Some parts of Vermont could face extreme rain events twice as often, the data suggests, right? So the 19 years goes to 9.5 years. Many residents of Montpelier were caught off guard by the intensity of Monday's rain. This is a very unusual pattern, the quote the mayor says. So certainly nobody was expecting it, said Jack McCullough, the city's mayor. As we head into July, we are looking for summer weather in Montpelier. We're not looking for this, right? So several paragraphs later, the downpour is characterized as a 1,000-year event, even though no one was around West Point to record such events circa 1023 AD. Right? So in some areas, such as West Point in Vermont, rain came down so quickly it could be considered a once-in-a-1,000-year event, right? Based on the probability of occurring in that spot in any given year. Washington Post says all of this because emissions-driven global warming causes the atmosphere to carry more moisture. Of course, that moisture put in the atmosphere by the El Nino since 1980 is what is causing the warming. Yet the WAPO wants you to believe it's emissions, right? So, of course, it's even in the article. As the planet warms, the air carries more moisture, right? So it went from, we're not sure if it's a 1,000-year event that happened 2 days ago in Vermont. We should expect it every 9.5 years, or if it's once in 100 years. We don't know. The article doesn't say, right? So Steve Malloy finally asks, is yesterday's rain and northeast rain a 1,000-year event, a 100-year event, a 19-year event, or a 9.5-year event? Nobody knows. Or will the Washington Post say anything except the facts, or will they just say climate change? So, of course, we are talking about the parts per million. So that's what did it, right? There's a couple more parts per million of a trace thing in our atmosphere. So we're all done. All right, we got tiny. This is like a cross between Moscow time and what we're going to talk about next. So, if anyone didn't see, Andrew Tate was on Tucker Carlson. So let me just frame Andrew Tate first for how I've been talking about him on the show. So not really a fan of all the stuff, right? But what I've said from the start is he's so effective that he could destabilize all of it, right? He's very good at what he does. And he's sort of the right guy at the right time. So he's not really someone who speaks to me necessarily, which is what I've sort of been saying. I don't need like a male big brother or anything like that, right? Like most of what he's describing out there, you know, a man whose wife respects him and children who respect the dad. As a Bitcoiner, you know, I've sort of maintained that lifestyle anyway, right? So I'm kind of the old-fashioned standard that he's referring to. So like, I'm not against him or anything. I just don't really follow a lot of the stuff and don't have any appetite for machismo or anything like that. Now, I get why people would, and I'm totally into bro science, right? Totally into bro science. So, you know, it's just one of these situations, but I appreciate what he does, and I appreciate the role he plays, and I understand and appreciate that there are millions and maybe billions of men who could stand to benefit from what he's talking about. So, we're not here saying, oh, Andrew Tate is so great, right? That's not what we're saying. But the interview was worthwhile. And it's 2 hours and something, Tucker Carlson. Millions of views already, by the way. I did not watch the whole interview. It came out last night. I took bits and pieces out of it and things like that. Here are the initial funny reactions. This is a tiny bit of Moscow time. But, you know, you remember old Ben Collins? I haven't talked about him in a while. So Ben Collins, right? He's like the regular on MSNBC and various NBC podcasts and NBC shows and all that. And if you listen to the Twitter files and if you listen to what's going on in Glenn Greenwald's world, this guy, now I have no insider information. I'm just saying the context of what they say, that he is more or less one of these CIA employed journalists that we've been talking about for a while. The people they mentioned in Operation Mockingbird and in the Church Commission in the 1970s. So this is what it looks like, according to people who know, right? So I work under the presumption Glenn Greenwald is operating in good faith and giving us reasonable names that he is not really questioning. I don't think they're doubting it right now. Again, I don't have proof that Ben Collins is what Glenn Greenwald says he is, but I do operate under the assumption that Glenn Greenwald is right, and this guy does this stuff because everything fits, right? So now I could change my mind if somehow he really was this stupid and manipulative, but we'll see. Get that truck past. All right, so here's what Ben Collins wrote. So it's a tiny bit of Moscow time in it, right? Because he's not a journalist per se. He's an information launderer. He's the guy you get on to give a quote. He's one of these misinformation media commentators. He has no real job other than the CIA pays him to go on these things regularly. So here's what he says. Now just look at this word salad as well, right? Elon and Tucker have created a manosphere bubble that is obsessed with masculinity through the lens of dick measuring, testicle tanning, and cuckdom. They have abdicated power and marginalized themselves by constantly fixating on weird psychosexual ideas. And so that's what Ben Collins had to say about it. Not to be outdone, Bellingcat, the founder and creative director of Bellingcat, another one of these organizations that Glenn Greenwald brings up regularly as a CIA information laundering apparatus. So here's what Elliot Higgins, the founder, says. It's worth noting that the vast majority of views from this video are from Elon Musk amplifying it by quote tweeting it. Tucker's guest, Elon, is currently charged with rape. Tucker's guest, Elon is amplifying, is currently charged with rape and human trafficking, charged in Romania, right? With no proof or anything. So that's what the typical information launderers are saying. Ben Collins also went on to say, this is just very, very sad. It's so sad. It's sad. I'm so sad for Tucker. Tucker's only getting millions of views. It's so sad. Rolling Stone also added they already have an article up, right? What was the one once that Rolling Stone had it turned around within minutes? What was that again? I don't remember. It was like printed on a Sunday morning for some weird reason. Someone can remind me, but I remember being shocked by the turnaround of Rolling Stone being able to get an article out that quickly. And Rolling Stone, by the way, is another one of these publications, according to Glenn Greenwald and others, that has been completely co-opted by national security interests. I think even RFK mentioned that Rolling Stone has fallen prey to this stuff. But Glenn Greenwald certainly puts Rolling Stone in this group. The headline that managed to be written within this was written at 11 o'clock at night. I'm not even sure there was time to watch the interview by the time they wrote this headline because it came out yesterday. Tucker Carlson, Andrew Tate interview is a bro fest of lies and bullshit. So that's what they say. Now, here's how you can see how I'll get to that. I have another Ben Collins comment, but I'll just break down what they said in the Tate Tucker interview, the things that were relevant and important. So he gave his definition, Andrew Tate, about the Matrix, which was excellent. Now, I'm very against using the Matrix as an analogy only because it lacks creativity. That's it, right? I don't refuse to use it as an analogy to explain things because it's not accurate. It's just because everybody does it, right? So my actual resistance to using the Matrix to explain things to people is really just like creative desires and not wanting to do the same thing, right? So it's nothing more than that. Big fan of the Matrix. So he explains how the Matrix operates in his world, right? Just basically a collusion between media interests, banking interests, and these folks, in order that people can't really think for themselves, and they'll have talking points interjected and downloaded into their brains, right? So basically just slotted in. So basically it's the meme we've all been talking about the NPC just having new talking points downloaded and dropped into their brain. And he likened that to seeing agents overwhelm normal humans plugged into the Matrix. The way the agents navigate through the Matrix, he said, is what you actually see after COVID, right? When you have a conversation with someone you thought was normal, but then all of a sudden you'd see the talking points kick in and the eyes glaze over, and you'd see just how programmable, how prompt engineerable human beings are. And indeed, that's why I've been using a lot of this conversation around AI to describe how easily prompt engineered humans are, right? We're all victims to it. We're all prone to it. It's just how we are wired. It's a little bit about mimetics, which we're going to talk about more today. So there's just a trigger that humans will operate. We'll sort of look around, see what our social cohort is doing, and make decisions regularly that way. So what he was saying is that way that the agents actually manifest themselves, he saw very clearly during COVID, and you can still see it today. Whenever you hear someone with Ukraine, for example, oh, but we have to bomb them to have peace, right? That is an exact example of one of these agents sort of manifesting themselves in the real world. So they talked about another thing that he mentioned, a worry that he has is that people are starting to become immunized, inoculated from the typical playbook, which is accuse someone of some sex crime in his case, right? So in his case, they're accusing him, in his words, of trying to compel women to do TikTok videos so that he can take the TikTok money, right? And he said, look, the point is to accuse someone of sex crimes in order to completely undermine them and undermine their credibility in the public, which was the battle plan they used on Assange. Don't forget, right? Assange, when they first arrested him, he was arrested for rape. Now, those charges have been dropped, right? There was no trial. There was nothing to do with it. They got him on other things now. But remember, the initial arrest of Julian Assange was because of some rape charge, right? So we're going to have his wife again come to Bitcoin Amsterdam in October. We're going to be covering a lot of the stuff around Julian. We're talking to Julian right now, his people and team, trying to get a letter or one of these things just to talk about what's going on there. And maybe he will mention something about this rape case, because that's exactly what Tucker and Cobra Tate were talking about. Was what worries Cobra Tate is that because the battle plan is gone, it's not going to work. They're going to come up with something crazier. It won't just be like, oh, you raped someone, other stuff, right? They joked about why didn't Andrew Tate start FTX and launch a coin, right, to make real money to defraud people. So I thought that was kind of funny. But the most important stuff I thought that I've seen, again, I haven't seen the whole interview. Well, I guess a little bit about, they talked a little bit about war too. Don't look for good guys and bad guys. Something we've been saying for a while here, right? We might regularly denounce Zelensky, for example, around here, right? Oh, did you see Malcolm Flex? Who's a great follow. If you don't follow Malcolm Flex on Twitter, by the way, you ought to. So Malcolm Flex had was talking about this stuff and about Zelensky. Did everyone see the memes of Zelensky being left alone at the NATO summit yesterday, and he had no friends, and it's sort of gone viral now where no one wants to talk to Zelensky anymore, and he's out of favor, and he's not cool like he used to be, and everyone was ignoring him. Who knows if it's true? It was just a picture that someone took, but what did Malcolm Flex say? I wanted to read it to you. Yeah. So this is Malcolm Flex. So Malcolm Flex 48, Malcolm _ Flex 48. He's one of these, another bro science guy who we love, was talking about this sort of meme of him being all alone. And he says, so it's a conversation, right? He doesn't say who it is. Malcolm Flex is an African-American, which you have to tell for the story because of the way it's sort of written. So he says, so it's fuck Zelensky now, huh? Y'all saying Zelensky can't beat Putin. Zelensky ain't no hitter. He just a short bitch. I'm going to show y'all. I can start World War III all by myself. Very good on Malcolm Flex for that one. So they were talking just about there's no good guys or bad guys, which I think is the correct frame. I think Andrew Tate has it completely right. We spend a lot of time shitting on Zelensky. Putin is not a good guy either, guys, right? We know that, right? Putin's not a good guy, right? Now, look, I don't want to see, I'm interested in an off-ramp for Putin, but I don't want to hang out with the guy. I'm not trying to be friends with Putin, right? So I think that was perfect, right? Him mentioning that. But the most important thing, the taxation one was good about not paying your taxes, right? So people at one day, which is what we've been predicting here, are just going to say, I'm not going to keep giving my money to keep this, to change the temperature of the sun. This global warming stuff, which is the perfect way to argue the global warming debate, right? It's not, because it's the stupidest thing in the world to debate global warming with people, right? Everyone is so in the bag. All you end up getting is someone explaining science to another person, right? You know, many people have tried to explain science to me when getting into a global warming debate. And then I felt for a long time compelled to do the same. No, you don't understand science, right? So it just becomes dog shit stupid. The best way to deal with it is exactly like this. Well, I don't think they have a temperature for the sun, and I'm going to not pay the money for changing a temperature gauge they don't have anymore. So that was excellent. And he talked a little bit more about just men in their position not wanting to participate. If you follow the rules of modern society, right? If you follow the rules, this leads into it the most effective, and I think the part that's going to go most viral, and the part at which he becomes the most destabilizing to the Matrix. It's these talking points, the men, women stuff. So, you know, basically, if you follow the rules in the 1950s and 60s, you're in a more honorable system, because if you listen to the top-down information coming from the, you know, progenitors of the military industrial complex and American society, well, at least you had a wife who respected you. At least you had kids who went to a good school. At least you owned your own home. And at least you had your own little kingdom. What he's saying now is, if you follow the rules, right? If you follow the rules, what's going to happen is you probably will never get the wife who respects you. You're not going to own your own home. You're going to be broke, just waiting to be financially destroyed by some divorce. And that this is just unacceptable to most males. And so here we are in this situation. He started to talk exactly about the equation and the beauty, let's say, of the male-female combination. Very feminine women, very masculine males. What happens with that magic cocktail, and that being deprived of that magic cocktail will leave everyone imbalanced and confused and without their actual fortification and inspiration in life. So that's the part at which that his stuff has a lot of impact and sort of really enters into the mind. So this whole imbalance piece, right, of men and women and how do they behave and how do they interact and how destabilizing it, you can see a perfect example of what he's talking about. Has anyone followed this Jonah Hill story? You know, the actor Jonah Hill. So I guess he had a girlfriend and they broke up, but the girlfriend was sharing his texts online. And 2 days ago, it was, you know, he didn't want her sort of around all these guys all the time. And why do you got to surf with these dudes all the time? And look, if we're going to have a relationship, you can't do that. Now, some people out there are saying, oh, what an asshole. He's crazy. Jonah's nuts, right? That's controlling. But the thing looked pretty respectful. The letter, he didn't look like a jerk. So a lot of other people saying the opposite. No, Jonah looked pretty reasonable. This isn't really abuse of any kind. This is a very amicable way of saying you don't meet my needs as a partner, and I don't think it's going to work out because you're doing something that disrespects me, and you go with all these men, and I don't like it, right? So she shared another one yesterday, right? She shared another one yesterday, and you can really tell this imbalanced situation that we're in, men and women, and what's going on, and it's kind of like therapy talk. Right. This is how men talk these days. This is Jonah Hill, a supposed Hollywood actor. Right. And so, you know, some people saying, oh, his ex is insane. True, because she's sharing this stuff as he's putting it out. Right. She's just sharing it online. So you can tell she's going nuts. But here's, just listen to the language. Listen to the language and think about what Cobra Tate said. Right. Now, I'm with Jonah here, right? What he's saying here is there's nothing wrong with what he's saying. So I'm not making fun of what he's saying. I'm making fun, not even making fun. I'm underlining how he says it and tying it to what Andrew Tate said. So this is the text. Screenshotting intimate texts between us is a huge triggering violation for me and breach of trust as a friend, as I have explained to you about breaches of trust I have had between trusted friends recently that have caused me trauma. I'm incredibly hurt and feel a lack of safety where I have always trusted you. I'm sorry if a former... Hold on, CC. No. You got to go. Yeah. I love you. I am incredibly hurt and feel a lack of safety where I have always trusted you. I'm sorry if a former partner moving on is painful, and I empathize with that. But I have done nothing wrong. And if I wasn't a public person, I wouldn't face this kind of violation. And having shared that with you, and then watching you be like this today shatters my ability to trust anybody even further. I have always shown you kindness and support, right? So now there's absolutely nothing wrong with what he said, right? I think this is very respectful. It's a very clean way. You can even tell he's sort of anticipating she's going to share this text as well, right? So, but what I mean is the clinical language. It sort of sounds feminine. 1 second. So when you hear this kind of really feminized language, clinical, it kind of sounds exactly like therapy talk, right? It sounds like therapy talk. Now, the therapy game, by the way, is a complete scam for most males, right? Because it has a lot to do with, um, um, more or less what Andrew Tate is saying. It doesn't look to be like it's a balanced situation, and it ends up having you speak in ways like this. Like, does this compel respect? Not really, right? And so language and the way we speak has been already manipulated by these systems in the world, and it comes out really crazy, right? It comes out in things like this. And even if you go and look at the way, for example, that Ben Collins was discussing stuff, right? That bro, what did he call it? What were his exact words here? It was um the manosphere bubble, right? And they're marginalized themselves, abdicated power by fixating on weird psychosexual ideas. Is it a weird psychosexual idea that men and women perfect each other, and if they don't, that balance is lost, that they'll both be effed up? Right? That's the weird thing. That's the weird thing he's saying. And you can look at how twisted language is. Zuby did a really interesting thing yesterday. Zuby, who we love, right? Zuby comes to Bitcoin Magazine shows. He released a woke translator. Right now, the woke word we're not so down with, but the translator is interesting because this shows you just how much language has been infected in the recent years, right? Just recently. So here's what he says. And this all falls in line, I think, with the way even Jonah Hill was talking. Like, I would imagine Jonah Hill would use a lot of these languages. You'd need a translator at this point to understand what Jonah Hill is talking about. And so he says, hate equals disagreement, far right equals conservative, racist equals white conservative, white supremacist equals conservative any race, fascist equals conservative, gender equals personality plus preference, transphobia equals acknowledging biological reality, gender affirmation equals rejection of biological reality, misinformation equals inconvenient fact, the science equals government approved scientific claim, science/climate denial equals questioning government approved scientific claim, expert equals person with degree aligned with mainstream, assault weapon equals black colored rifle, violence equals hurting feelings of woke person, anti-vaxxer equals person who opposes vaccine mandates and or refused COVID-19 jab, diversity equals fewer white men, women equals unknown. Unknown. So he comes up with all of this stuff and talks about how it's basically language has been completely neutered in these ways, and that's why we're left with like body language reading and stuff like that. That's why the Jerome Powell body language, the body language of Zelensky yesterday. What about this? They broke down Janet Yellen's body language from the speech she gave the other day. I don't know if you guys follow her, Body Language Ghost. She's on YouTube. Really great stuff, by the way. And so she did one yesterday on Yellen, China, and BRICS currency. So she did the bowing thing too that we did, a couple days ago. the Peking bow, right? Just the 10,000. But there's another bowing. It wasn't just the one guy. It was coming off the plane. She even bowed to the American ambassador. He bowed to the American ambassador. So she breaks down her body language, and when she's asked about BRICS, she does like her face goes like when they say gold backed, you got to see it. You know, her face like, she has a total like cognitive dissonance, right? And so she's there and talks about that. Of course, the whole Janet Yellen trip has been a disaster, right? Wall Street Journal even says a tale of two meals. Janet Yellen's outreach in China yields mixed results. So I guess she had a dinner with some female, speaking of, you know, division of sexes, she had dinner with some female women economists in China. And so that was turned into, oh, she's actually meeting with spies and it's misogynistic and da da da. But then she had another meal with men and it was like a positive response in China. So did you know what? I found out what she's actually known for. I actually looked more into her history yesterday. She's married to a Nobel Prize winner. He got his Nobel Prize from admitting that information asymmetry was like something people worked off of in Wall Street, right? Information asymmetry. And then she worked with him too. And they wrote a paper together. This is sort of what made her career. You know what her thing was on? It's called the work game or something about a game she created. But basically it's about she's proving as an economist that reciprocation exists, that if you do something for someone, they might have to do something back to you. And she called it like some game where you increase, like an employer increases the salary of an employee and sees if they work more, if they feel obliged to work harder by getting a wage, like a salary increase. You know, Janet Yellen using science to prove reciprocation works in the human mind. Genius economist. But this, you know, way we talk and when you listen to someone like her just babbling, right? None of it makes sense. You had this whole long press conference in China. She didn't say shit. She went to all these things in China, didn't say shit. Most of these economists now don't say shit. It's just babbling, right? Which is the product of what system they've created, this matrix, as what's his name talks about it. But you can see Bitcoin's advantage come through right there, and that is language versus mimetic broadcasting and dissemination of information. If you can condense everything into mimetics and not just use language and words to describe things, you're gonna win the fight. It's just much more packed. And this goes in two different ways, right? Once you get something to mimetic awareness, it's able to translate much quicker. Now, you can spread false, stupid misinformation using mimetics as well. Alan Farrington noticed this when he was looking at a few. So Alan Farrington, if you guys, you know, he wrote the Bitcoin is Venice, also a speaker that we love having at our events. Very anti-academic. His gauge theory thing on Eric Weinstein a couple of years ago, one of the greatest pieces ever written in the history of Bitcoin, by the way. So here he is. He's working on a fund now, and he was looking at some decks that funds, you know, funds put out these decks with their investment thesis in it, and they try and, you know, fill the fund and get people to put money into it. And he saw one from just recently, right before the FTX and all the things that have changed in the past year. And it's from December 2021. And it says it's still regurgitating blockchain, not Bitcoin. It's still all about Web3 and metaverse stuff. And so here's what he says. I was skeptical for a long time, but I'm increasingly seeing the appeal of Thiel's obsession with René Girard and mimetics. That slide, so he's talking about a slide here, regurgitating the stuff that I just mentioned. If you try to understand this with reference to truth or explanatory power, you will only end up banging your head against a wall. The proper framework is that ideas are just viruses that add or subtract status to those who spread them. Truth becomes relevant way later. And really, that's where we're at when it comes to what's going on in America and what's going on in Bitcoin, for example, right? Bitcoin has a capacity to increase the status of everyone who's involved with it. And I think a lot of people like it for that reason, of course, right? Because by increasing status, it's not just, oh, I'm higher in the pecking order. you can imagine a better future, you can imagine yourself in a better future. And the US dollar system simply doesn't provide that, in the sense that unless you do what Cobra Tate or Andrew Tate is warning you about, right? Become an agent whenever you need, regurgitate talking points, find a way to success by being like Ben Collins, by being like Janet Yellen. Look at her history. Her employment history is back and forth with credentialism, going into the industries she's regulating, back to the regulator, back to the industry, back to the regulator. The typical battle plan for most people in the late 20th century and in the fiat system. And so the prestige factor has a lot to do with it. And that's why the prestige of people like Janet Yellen becoming so embarrassing, and the Ben Collins becoming so embarrassing, and all of these guys becoming so embarrassing is so important. And why Bitcoiners just lifting weights and doing basic stuff, having, doing their best to have a happy family, doing their best to be a good dad, simple stuff, right? Or a good wife or whatever. Partner, even, like, Bitcoiners are not out there saying it's got to be a conservative, like not even what Cobra Tate is saying necessarily, right? But just not about low time preference or high time preference and any dopamine available, go get it, have a rush, and all those things. So it's an interesting way of framing it between memes and language, and which one is going to be more beneficial and which one will bring you more prestige in the future, and therefore which one will help really populate what the future looks like. And that's why we think Bitcoin is going to do it. It's just going to be much more effective at creating that future. But even within the sort of mimetics of what Bitcoin can do, just this prestige piece is changing so quickly with the Ben Collins and the interference of national security interests in American policing and all of those things. And Vivek, I think, did a lot yesterday to help push this forward. One second, to help change this equation and conversation and what's going on. And by that, he has put the FBI in an unbelievable corner here. An unbelievable corner. And I think it was the right thing at the right time. And people don't really realize some people do, but what Vivek did yesterday by creating 15 questions, right, for committee members to deal with Ray and the FBI. And I think if you get these out there, you're finally going to have the actual mimetic, viral takedown of national security interests that Americans are waiting for. So Bruce Fenton met him yesterday when this came out. So Bruce Fenton, great Bitcoiner, says, I met Vivek again today in New Hampshire. Please be aware that while he is charming, friendly, witty, and young, he is also extremely serious. In my opinion, he is the most serious and has the most depth of any major candidate. Please read his post here and his other writing and speeches. He is brilliant and hardworking and has the ideas and intelligence and the know-how and the will to actually right this country. I've been active in politics a long time and have worked in New Hampshire primaries for over 30 years, since before I could even vote. I'm telling you, he has a real chance to win in New Hampshire. If he wins in New Hampshire, he can be sworn in as our next president, untitle, I think he means unite the nation, and move America into a new chapter. So here's what he says. Ahead of FBI Director Christopher Wray's testimony tomorrow before the House Judiciary Committee, I'm calling on committee members to ask Wray the following 15 questions and hold him accountable. So this could happen today, guys. Today, we could have major change. Because I predict this is going to go viral. If anyone questioning Christopher Wray goes with this, we are now going to be talking about destroying the FBI openly without Ben Collins and all these people getting in the way, right? If U.S. voters in 2024 elect a U.S. president who seeks to shut down the FBI, this is question one. What is your recommended plan to help execute on this policy directive in an orderly manner? 2, John Durham issued a lengthy report in May accusing the FBI of acting negligently in opening the Trump-Russia investigation in 2016 based on insufficient information. As head of the Bureau, after having read and reflected on Mr. Durham's report, what steps will the Bureau take to prevent baseless, politicized investigations like that which impeded President Trump's first term in office? Number 3, in 2020, you claimed Antifa was an ideology, not an organization. Do you still believe that? If yes, who or what exactly do you believe destroyed downtown Portland, firebombed businesses, and attacked the city courthouse for months? 4, regarding the events of January 6th at the Capitol, there have been multiple reports suggesting that undercover FBI agents were involved in fomenting protesters. Can you clarify the FBI's precise role in the situation and provide explanation of the facts? Considering cases like the Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping plot, do you think the FBI does a responsible job of handling informants and undercover agents? Do you believe FBI-led entrapment is and should be lawful? Will you share the Jeffrey Epstein client list with the public? Will you investigate members of Congress to use taxpayer/fund or hush money to hide sexual assault allegations? What is your opinion about the Department of Justice labeling concerned parents at school board meetings as domestic terrorists? Do you share this view? The unprecedented raid of former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence raised serious public concerns about the political persecution of current president's chief political opponent. What alternatives did you evaluate before sending FBI agents to raid the residence of a former U.S. president? The FBI's handling of investigations into Hunter Biden's foreign business deals and Joe Biden's involvement in these deals leave many unanswered questions about the Bureau's decisions. Why do you believe that a settlement between Hunter Biden and the U.S. Department of Justice for a 10-year-old offense was announced only within a couple of weeks following the federal indictment of the 45th U.S. president? Why did the FBI refuse to cooperate with Congress with respect to oversight inquiries pertaining to then Vice President Joe Biden's alleged involvement in a $5 million bribery scheme with a Ukrainian company? Is the FBI investigating General Mark Milley for his supposed back-channel discussions with the Communist Chinese government shortly after the 2020 U.S. presidential election? How many FBI agents were fired last year? How many should have been fired? Your predecessor, James Comey, received a multi-million-dollar book deal and charges six-figure public speaking fees. Do you believe this is appropriate behavior for the former director of the FBI? And finally, do you believe it is appropriate for the FBI to celebrate the legacy of J. Edgar Hoover, the namesake of the building in which the FBI is currently headquartered? That's it. That's it. He got basically the 15 questions. If we had reasonable answers that weren't babbling nonsense, America would be in a much better position. We would at least know the truth, right? But it doesn't matter. I think they are going to do a good job today, and I think you are going to see some of this stuff go viral, and you're going to see a mimetic treatment to a lot of this stuff. So there you go. Lots changing on that level. Just a second. So there it is, guys. It's all happening now. That's not all of it, right? So that's the bad news. That's the babbling bucks and the thing that is just not going to perpetuate forward, right? But the mimetic money has major advantages, right? And we're going to see them. So here's amazing news. You know the AI guy, Sam Altman, right? You know he's got a nuclear fission startup as well, Oklo. So they're going to go public. They're going to raise a shit ton of money. But did you know that this company has a 20-year deal with Compass Mining to mine Bitcoin with those nuclear reactors? That deal was signed a few years ago, but I imagine it's going to continue and grow and do all kinds of great stuff, right? So they're going to talk about, a lot of nuclear energy coming out of this deal. And with the public money coming in, one could start to see very clearly Bitcoin into the financing of those reactors. And you should get some pretty interesting stuff out of it, right? So Jeff Senkinger talks about it here, about Oklo and what's going on. So with Bitcoin mining being an integral aspect of BTC, nuclear power may be the solution to reduce, we don't care about the footprint. What he says here, though, is an energy startup has signed a 20-year deal with Bitcoin mining firm to build a small nuclear plant. So we'll see. I think it's going to be cool. But now remember the AI part, right? So there is an AI overlap there. We got Sam, who's not a big Bitcoiner, right? He's got the WorldCoin and the iRetina thing, but it doesn't matter. Mimetically, it all sort of blends in, and we're starting to at least have the conversation about mining, nuclear energy. And here's what Hugo Nguyen, who we love, he's Hugo Hanoi on Twitter. We mentioned him the other day. He's probably the best technical debater about Ethereum and all of this stuff, right? So really, sharp fella. So he's here talking about the AI Bitcoin symbiosis that I've been talking about for a long time. So what he says is self-custody of Bitcoin might end up being the only job that AI cannot replace. Everything can potentially be automated except for control over your health, wealth, and consequently your life. AI and Bitcoin are alike in many ways, but also polar opposites. They're both digital and fundamentally powered by the same technology, computing chips. Yet AI represents superintelligence and Bitcoin the power of agency sovereignty. Mind-blowing when you think about it. One is about giving up control to something more efficient, intelligent. The other is about regaining control. And indeed, that's how this whole balance, even that Tate was talking about, the balance between men and women and what that can do, and what a perfect equation that results in. And indeed, it looks like Bitcoin and AI has a very similar perfect equation. They sort of just wed with each other perfectly. So that's what I think that's headed. And there you go. All right, let me see what's going on in the comments. And sorry if the kids, I don't know, they've got something going on. They're crazy today. We really love our warmongers. Bon matin, boo boo. Bon matin, boo boo. We flooded in Hurricane Irene. I'm sorry to hear that, but you made it out yesterday, Daniel. Good, good. A normal day here / normal year. Yeah. Joe says it was a good interview and worth the time. Yeah, I just didn't have the time yesterday. That's all it was. Sounds like Ben feels left out. Yeah, Ben Collins. You have a good filter, in my opinion, and fun. Thanks, Ranmore. Good morning. That's the right attitude, Julian. Colin, you shouldn't. You shouldn't. There's Julian. You shouldn't trust any of them until Julian is free. Oh no, I'm late. Zelensky is a bad actor, but you know who's a worse actor? I want to see a Justin Trudeau and Zelensky in a show together one day. That would be the worst, right? Maybe there's going to be no actors left in Hollywood, and they'll give them to these guys. Event tracker detail. I don't know what that is, man. Global warming is nothing more than the newest way for the banker. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I think you're right. I think you're right. Zelensky should have worn a suit. I think there is an effort to cause gloom with cloud seeding and weather modification. Create problem, provide solution, profit, repeat. Could be. Can't believe anyone these days. Daniel, listening at 2x, 20 minutes behind. Let's go. There you go. If in the US we could US state by US state defund federal programs, that would be awesome. Lawful. I think that's going to happen. Yo, pump stream. Where is a copy of this list? The list was either the Zuby translation list, which was excellent, and you'll find that on his Twitter, so Zuby Music, or else it was the Vivek list, which he just tweeted as well. So, yeah. Good to see you, Nikki. Good to see you. Theory of everything. Yeah, we're getting there. How can you imagine a better future when we know the end of existence is promised to us by God himself? No, the end of time, not existence, time. And time, of course, is infinity is the end of time as well, right? So I try not to anthropomorphize the promises God made, and I try not to even contemplate too much of them. Now, I'm definitely a God-fearing person. But what I will say is that a lot of this language around infinity, right? Infinity means no time, the end of time. So the end of existence is not exactly what was said. We exist forever. We live forever, right? That's the promise. So there you go. So I can indeed imagine a much better future. 1 BTC equals revolutionary math. The biggest reason to enjoy your life, absolutely. Zen or living in the moment. Yeah, I mean, I do my best to live in the moment, Goblin Dude. Art also poses other more dire concernings. Yeah, I think some of them are made up and blown out of proportion, though. But I won't deny, Goblin Dude, there are demons in there. There's demons, there's ghosts in the machine for sure. For sure. Assalam, Nolan. Assalamu alaikum. Indeed, Muslim Bitcoiner. Glad you made it. AI can't. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think they're going to help us transact. That's what my whole story is about, right? We hold the Bitcoin, but they help us transact. There you go. Nikki, I know I'm about to quit Bitcoin. This is not happening. 9 days. It is called the Hegelian. They create the problem and offer you the solution. Yeah. Well, again, this version of existence, based on time. The dimension that we're in is a time-based dimension, right? And that's what gives it. That's the three dimensions, right? Length, width, time. So there you go. Time is an important part of it. All right, team. That's all I got for today. I hope you're doing well. I shall see you tomorrow. I got a few things to do today. You might see me back in Montreal in the Montreal studio. So there you go. All right. Peace, everyone. Hey, where's my thing? There's no more end stream. There's no button to end my stream. Oh, there we go. Peace. I'll bring up this one because I like the we like to have a nice just pleasant parting